Hey, confirmed negative. What's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite movies, and today I'm going to do a quick review on Eternals, the latest, not actual latest, the last MCU movie that came out before Spider-Man No Way Home, but I didn't watch it in the cinema because I didn't want to, because I wasn't interested in it, so I had to wait all all the way, all the time until it gets released on Disney Plus so that I can watch it on my laptop. So yes, earlier today I finally finished watching Eternals. I wanted to watch it last night, but apparently the movie is 2 hours and 35 minutes long. So I'm like, okay, I gotta sleep. So I went to bed at around 4 a.m. last night. So or more like this morning, and I just continued it. So I finally finished Eternals, and uh, yeah, this is a strange one. This is a strange one in my opinion. Now, Marvel's Phase 4 has never been very good in my opinion. Ever since Phase 4 has begun, most of the movies are pretty disappointing and bland. Black Widow is the worst one so far, and then there's Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, which I thought has some potential. It's a fun movie, but at the end, it's still kind of bland, kind of cliche, kind of cheesy. There are a lot of Chinese things in the movie that aren't even Chinese in the first place, and it's just very dumb at a few points. And then there's Spider-Man No Way Home, which I actually really like. I think it's one of the better movies of 2021. It is fun and it is epic, and I legitimately enjoy it. And then there's Eternals, which is what I'm going to be talking about now. My hair looks stupid. I know. There's nothing I can do about it. So, Eternals is the MCU movie. It is about a bunch of people, bunch of um, like gods who have superpowers. They look like humans. They live among humans, and they've been living for thousands of years, and they have not aged at all. And they're supposed to kill these like dog monsters, and they're called deviants. And apparently, they don't know what they're actually there for. So the ultimate god who made them, his name is Aramesh or something, and his name's Aramesh because it sounds Arabic, so it sounds cool because Arabic is such a mysterious language. So Aramesh, the ultimate big god, created these Eternals secretly. Um, because of an ulterior motive, and that is to harm humans and use them as a power source to create another celestial being. So, yeah, it's very confusing, first of all. Plot wise, this is very confusing. And usually, if a movie is very confusing, it would be fine if it's longer because it would take time to explain the confusing plot. But I have to admit, this movie is it's not very great. It's not very great. So this movie is directed by Chloe Zhao, who had won Best Director in the Oscars last year. So having an Oscar-winning director direct a Marvel movie is a pretty big deal. And that being said, though, you have to realize that this is a Marvel movie. This isn't an indie film. So to be honest, even though it is Chloe Zhao who directed this movie, it could have been any other person and there wouldn't be a huge difference. The only thing from this movie, the only element from this movie that I can recognize that is a style of Chloe Zhao's is the very beautiful wide shots, handheld camera footage, the camera always moving, which I thought is really nice. I actually think the cinematography of this movie is quite nice, and it's definitely nicer than most of the Marvel movies I've seen. The cast ensemble of Eternals is huge as well. We have everybody from Gemma Chan to Richard Madden to Angelina Jolie, who is probably the highest billed actor here, Kumail Nanjiani, Salma Hayek, and Kit Harington, just to name a few. And I can also see that this Marvel movie tries to be something different. It actually really tried hard to be different from other movies. At a few points when I'm watching this movie, I feel like I'm not even watching a Marvel movie because it feels different. But this bubble is immediately then bursted with cheap, cheesy humor and crappy CGI fights that I think are very drab. And another thing I like about this movie is that they let their actors keep their own accents, aside from Angelina Jolie for some reason. So finally, Richard Madden speaks in a Scottish accent, and Barry Keoghan, I think that's how I pronounce it, speaks in an Irish accent. You know, I'm just tired of Scottish actors and Irish actors having to force themselves to speak an English accent or an American accent just because it's more mainstream. But that being said, though, I think that is as far as the pros of this movie goes. Everything else about this movie is kind of bad. First of all, the plot is very stupid. There is a lot of plot holes in the plot, and the movie could have become a TV show, and it would have made more sense because the plot is very confusing. It's very larger than life, and there are a lot of characters in this movie, and it's important to build these characters and develop these characters and make them feel human and relatable, even though they're not humans, but you get the idea. But instead, it is all crammed into 2 hours and 35 minutes, and frankly, that is not enough. There are a lot of moments in this movie that feel really rushed. Characters would be saying one thing, and then a minute later, they would be saying another. Their motives would change constantly. One of the characters in this movie is a child with red hair, and she makes a huge decision near the end of the movie, and it's so out of the blue. It makes no sense. And another character in this movie, Fastos, who is a gay black man, he's at first he's like, "Nah, man, I'm not gonna help you save the universe. I gotta take care of my husband and child," which is weird because they exist in on this Earth as well. So if Earth explodes, they will die too. And then a scene later, he's like, "You know what? Never mind. Let me help you. I'm with you 100%." Again, there are a lot of character motives just changing here and there, and it just makes no sense. And again, there are a lot of plot holes, tons of plot holes. The Eternals have never showed up in this universe because apparently they have a rule of not interfering with humankind. So whenever there is a genocide and colonization, when there was World War One and Two and friggin' Hiroshima, they cannot save anyone because they're not supposed to interfere. So when Thanos snapped the finger, they can't stop him. They just can't because it's none of their business. But apparently, Thanos snapping the finger also somehow directly threatened the celestial being from being birthed on Earth. So, doesn't that in turn also affect the Eternals' mission? So, shouldn't the Eternals show up to stop Thanos then? And there are tons of other plot holes. The characters are bland. Let's just get that out of the way. The characters are bland. They're boring. They're bland. The Richard Madden's character. Richard Madden's a good actor, but his character in this movie is so robotic and stale, and he has zero chemistry with Gemma Chan's character. Gemma Chan is your average, uh, just MCU woman who is very doubtful at first, but later somehow has the power to do whatever she wants to. And, and like other characters are just very bland. Of course, we have the Korean goofball, and then we have Kumail Nanjiani, who's the Indian goofball. But jokes on you, Kumail Nanjiani is actually a Pakistani. You've been trolled. And we have Salma Hayek, who doesn't really do anything. Again, a lot of the characters are just really bland and boring. And on top of that, there's a sex scene in this movie. There's a sex scene in a Marvel movie, which is again something that I applaud actually because it's bold, it's interesting, it's a new direction. Except the sex scene feels kind of unnecessary in this movie because the characters who had sex in this movie aren't even interesting characters in the first place, and the sex doesn't really serve any purpose to the plot whatsoever. So the inclusion of this sex scene literally adds nothing to this movie. And not forgetting to mention all these very dumb and tacked on allusions to the past, like, ooh, they were there when the Babylonian Empire existed. Oh, when Hiroshima happened, uh, the Eternals were there. Like, oh my god, when this happened, when that happened, haha. Icarus flying too close to the sun actually came true. Wow. Athena dropped the A. Like, all these allusions are super tacked on, and the movie treats it so shallowly and so jokingly. It's just really difficult to take serious. And yeah, the movie just has such a larger than life premise, yet this premise is never taken to the level that it's supposed to be taken to. So at the end, it just fails to convey this premise. For some reason, this movie also makes a couple references to DC. There's a Batman reference, and then at some point afterwards, there's a Superman reference, which I find kind of funny. I don't think it's a bad thing, and it would be cool if a Marvel movie makes references to DC as if DC is the comic and Marvel is the real world. It's the canon one, while in the DCEU, they make references to Marvel as if Marvel is just fiction and DC is the canon. That would be really funny. But yeah, DC references, and the soundtrack is pretty bad. In the last act of the movie, the soundtrack just has these electronic guitars which sound really unfitting to the tone of the scene, and it just feels very out of place. So yeah, overall Eternals is not a very great movie. I would say that this movie feels different from other cliche formulaic Marvel movies, and I appreciate that. But aside from that, there really isn't much to talk about. Kind of feeling a strong 5 on this movie, maybe a light 6. I'd say somewhere between a strong 5 to a light 6. I'm gonna go with a strong 5 for now. So, have you watched Eternals? From 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Like, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.